10-minute rule motion. Matt Weston.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move that leave be given to bring in a bill to introduce a presumption in planning decision-making against quarry development in close proximity to settlements, to require the risks of proposed quarrying sites to health and the environment, including through silica dust, to be assessed as part of the planning process, to make provision about the use of quarries for waste disposal and for connected purposes. Madam Deputy Speaker, I appreciate that legislation that seeks to shift the presumption in planning law against quarry development in the health interests of local residents may at first glance seem like a parochial issue. However, Madam Deputy Speaker, when the subject of planning decisions concern proposals that would have a substantial impact on the local community, central components of democracy are all at play: accountability, public health and local representation. Across the land, a great many communities face the prospect of quarries being permitted that will not just blight their areas but bring significant risks to human health, while at the same time, in certain cases, being surplus to requirement. As I aim to make clear, Madam Deputy Speaker, a local planning application in my constituency, specifically in relation to a proposed sand and gravel quarrying site near the villages of Barford and Wasperton, demonstrates this point in kind. It is also the issue which originated this campaign and that has motivated me to stand here today to push for this change in the law. The broader issue lies with existing legislation under the Town and Country Planning Regulations 2012 and the National Planning Policy Framework 2012, under whose statute local authorities are legally bound to prepare minerals plans with 15-year horizons, as I understand. Of course, on one hand, this makes eminent sense, but of course it is dependent on realistic housing planning projections, and many of us across this House were victim of the government's original algorithms. On another, it should give due importance to local amenity and public health, but as I will explain, it fails to acknowledge the latest science in terms of air quality and the threat to human health. Air quality has long been talked about as an issue. The Clean Air Act of 1956 acted to address the evident shocking risk to human health at that time. Those threats were clear for all to see, or not in the smogs of the first part of that century. But it is the hidden threats of invisible particulates and noxious gases that we should be alive to now. In April this year, a coroner concluded that the tragic death of 9-year-old Ella Adu Kissi-Dabra was triggered by poor air quality in her community due to vehicle emissions. She had endured 28 visits to hospital due to breathing problems. Following the case, the coroner wrote a report, The Prevention of Future Deaths, which urged the government to introduce legally binding limits to air quality based on the World Health Organization guidelines. That case alarmed the public and should certainly have caused alarm amongst the government. While PM10s and PM2.5s are now part of our lexicon in addressing air quality issues, there are wider issues that urgently need legislation, hence this bill. Essentially, it is about minimising the impact of emissions on residents' health and in particular on children's health. The science is extremely concerning and there is much research on this. On the point of air toxicity, the Environmental Working Group, a US-based body specialising in research and advocacy, has stated that none of the air quality standards for silica are adequate to protect people living or working near sand mining sites. The danger of airborne silica is especially acute for children. Silica air pollution has become a danger for residents near open sand mining and processing. Children, older adults and others with existing disease are especially at risk. I quote. As a result, they have concerns for any resident living within 1,500 metres of any excavation site because of the dissipation of dust particles. According to their evidence, gathered in open sand mines in Wisconsin and Minnesota, the silica levels were at least 10 times higher than that recommended of 3 micrograms per cubic metre. I can see no reason as to why that would be much different to levels found in areas bordering sand and gravel quarries in the UK. Let me turn to the example of the proposed Barford and Wasperton quarry, Madam Deputy Speaker. I could, of course, reference many of the other quarries proposed and in situ that concern colleagues across the Chamber, from Allen to St Albans and a great many communities in between. But Barford is symptomatic of the problem. The proposed quarry site there has been identified by Warwickshire County Council as part of its minerals plan. The purpose of the site is the excavation of sand and gravel. The site, put simply, is enormous. It almost dwarfs the village. The area is an area of approximately 85 hectares of arable farmland, about 50% of which is high-grade agricultural land, BMV or best and most versatile. Moreover, under the current plan, work at the quarry would take place just 350 metres from the southern edge of the village. Although the County Council proposed measures to reduce dust, these measures will not prevent the prevailing winds carrying dust over the village, a point borne out by the US research I referenced. The dust from the quarry will contain silica, which can be extremely harmful to young children and the elderly. Silicosis, which originates from silicate particles entering the lungs, is best described to be like asbestosis to a layperson. It is a killer. The proximity of St Peter's Primary School to the proposed site will mean 170 students will be put at particular risk. As I say, the impact of the Barford Quarry is not just limited to residents, but the local environment. Up and down the country, communities are facing the same challenges. The plans to build on the edge of Attenborough Nature Reserve, represented by my honourable friend, the member for Nottingham South, who was kind enough to put her name to this 10-minute rule bill today, could lead to even more substantial interference with nature than the quarry in my own constituency. We see the same issue in Lee Castle Farm Quarry in the constituency of the honourable member for Wyre Forest. The site is situated bang in between two, possibly three villages, Wolverley to the west and Cookley to the north. That there are 4 schools within a mile's distance of the centre of the site demonstrates the issue is serious and countrywide. Elsewhere, there are issues of the release of noxious gases from landfill sites close to communities, such as Wally's Quarry at Silverdale, Shropshire, and Parry's Quarry in Allen, where the quality of life for residents is harmfully impacted. The Environment Agency has previously shown how hydrogen sulfide levels recorded at the Silverdale site have at points exceeded the World Health Organization guidelines. And for the record, hydrogen sulfide is, of course, poisonous, a corrosive gas that is dangerous. By way of example, children living just half a mile from Wally's Quarry complain of chest problems, bronchiolitis, and consistent coughs. Many more complain of severe irritation to their eyes, understandable if an acidic gas is in contact with them. Let me be clear, I am not against quarries. I am for legislation that ensures all quarries and landfill sites are located at a safe distance from our communities, our villages and towns across the country, not at locations that favour the businesses or authorities that approve them. We need to ensure the future need is precisely that. We know we need to use recyclates more. We know we need to use more sustainable materials in construction. So why then are we continuing with plans based on the wrong methodologies and old technologies? The Office for National Statistics say we don't need the housing that my local council and the government claim we did. In fact, for the constituency, the Office for National Statistics forecasts our need for just half their original figure. Now, whilst I appreciate any consideration of future planning contains an element of estimation, this can always turn out to be either too conservative or too liberal. It is in this area that the provisions in my 10-minute rule bill would really have force. So in summary, this bill has 3 objectives: to create a presumption against granting permission for quarry developments in close proximity to settlements, to impose a requirement to assess the risks of proposed quarrying sites to health and the environment as part of the planning process, and finally to make provisions related to the use of waste disposal of quarries. The first objective would have the effect, in essence, of acting as a safety valve to an over-liberal estimation of population sizes and settlement. At the same time, it would protect current residents of neighbouring towns and villages. This provision is really inspired by the actions of other countries. In Canada, there is a requirement that quarries have to be 600 metres from settlements. Other countries have also introduced minimum distances, and we now need to act. Given the science, I believe the minimum distance should be set at least at 1,000 metres for silicates and noxious gases, as recommended by the research. It is clear that there is a need for legislation to address this issue. In an adjournment debate I held in October 2019 on this very issue, the Minister replying at the time concluded by admitting that she was unable to address the specific concerns I raised. That is no fault of the Minister at that time, but a fault of an ill-equipped planning system that fails to provide avenues for local residents to raise legitimate concerns about locally approved quarries. This bill seeks to close that gap. Given the World Health Organization has just updated its guidance in September, I would urge the government to take this extremely seriously. In my final remarks, Madam Deputy Speaker, I just wish to pay thanks to all the teams across the country campaigning against these planning applications. Examples such as the Eakins, the Steeles, Charlotte, Claire and the many others. Madam Deputy Speaker, I am proud to propose this bill in the House today, and I hope it will be one step further forward to protect protecting the health and well-being of local residents up and down the country against ignorant planning systems that do not align with local democratic wishes or recognise the health risks as we understand them today.
Thank you. The question